Welcome back to Daybreak 946. Next Tuesday is Election Day, and to help you get in the spirit of things, this week's Storytime with Aunt Phil takes us back to Alaska's first election.
The year 1912, and as author Laurel Downing Bill tells us, the winners would take great efforts to make it to the capital.
The state legislature. Members meet in Juneau, and soon, when in Anchorage, will call the Wells Fargo building home.
Getting to either location, not too difficult in 2016, but Laurel, a much different story 100 years ago. In fact, at the start, representatives, well, they had nowhere to go because there were none.
After Alaska became a possession of the United States in 1867, they had no say in their government. It was all the feds. But in 1912, when Alaska became a territory, things changed, and they could actually elect their first legislature.
November 5th, 1912, Alaska's first election. Who were people voting for at the time?
Well, you had 8 senators and 16 representatives up for election. And when they went to the polls on November the 5th in 1912, they cast their ballots. Now, most of these guys were all nonpartisan. They didn't have any party affiliation.
We touched on it in the beginning. Those winners went to great lengths to get to Juneau. What did it really take?
Oh, my goodness. Well, 4 legislators that were elected from Nome packed up their sleds and took their dog teams off. On January the 7th, they left Nome and they mushed 300 miles to Ruby, where they rested, and then they picked up the legislator from Ruby, and off they went another 230 miles by dog team to Fairbanks, where they again rested before they did the 360-mile journey down to Valdez. The last of them arrived in Valdez on February the 13th, and then they all boarded the Northwestern steamship and headed off to Juneau. 2 other legislators, also from Nome, were so sure that they were going to make the election and be elected that they left Nome in October on the last steamship out and got to Juneau, and by gosh, they were right. They did get elected.
Were there complaints back then that the capital was in Juneau?
There certainly were, but the complaints were based around how long it took to get there and all the mushing and dog teams that had to deal with, as well as all the steamship connections and stuff, not about the inclement weather and trying to fly in. So I think our legislators today still have it a little bit easier than the ones back in 1912 did.
Easier, but there's definitely still some grumbles. Regardless, that first elected legislature meets. What's the first order of business that they took care of?
The very first bill they passed was enfranchising women to vote. It took the U.S. another 6 years before women got the right to vote. And I might add, too, that the home for our first legislature was the Elks Lodge in Juneau. They did not have any offices.
Now here we are, years later, standing in front of the legislature's newest home right here in Anchorage.
Election Day, 5 days away. Early voting available right now in Alaska. It's not just the presidential election, a lot of state races too.
I feel like you can get any kind of business done in an Elks Lodge.
Yeah.
It was probably a good first choice. Hey, and next week, did you mention we're going to look at the Constitution?
Oh, no.
Yeah, next week on Storytime with Aunt Phil. The state constitution. We'll take a look back.